Well, hello, you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I'm your host, Dr. Jefferson, and today we are going to be talking about a couple of things. I have been kind of missing in action. I haven't been here with you guys spending time or anything of the sort, and I've been just really busy, but I have missed having these conversations. And if you guys are new here, I want to say that Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson is a platform where we discuss some sensitive issues and topics around things that directly affect or impact the Black and Brown community, melanated community in general. So if you're a first-time viewer, welcome, have a seat. Some of the things that I discuss in today's show will be a bit testy. I love the way this stuff feels. This is from Ace Butte, by the way. It feels like mousse on your lips. I'm not sure. Not a lip gloss kind of person. This is more like a lip stain, but it's made like in a lip gloss container. Man, this stuff feels good. But anyway, back on topic, right? Today we're going to have some interesting conversation around some issues that have been going on and people have asked me to kind of weigh in on. And I think they are important. They are important for us to talk about, but, due to the overwhelming responsibilities of what it is to be a psychotherapist, I think I've been kind of MIA. I fully own that. But I'm going to play some of the topics and the questions and things that, was sent to me. I want to know what you guys feel. I'll share my thoughts or whatever, but I really want to know. I want to survey the temperature in the Black community about a couple of things today. So give me a second so I can play these disclaimers in my intro for the show, and I will be right back. Hello, 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 you guys. Welcome back. For those of you who took a pause from the blues show intro, that's all right. You know, you guys you're not into the music that I'm into or whatever, but that's kind of what I'm into. It's what I like. For those of you who sat through it, thank you, thank you, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that, love. So today I'm going to start off, I guess, talking about, let me see. And you guys have to excuse me because I'm kind of solo dolo today. The producer will not be joining us because has other things that he is dealing with right now. So this one. So a couple of days ago, somebody sent me this, and I gotta admit, I have not been watching the news because like I've been swamped to kind of let you know kind of what's going on with me. Yeah, it's a lot of need out there. So I've been busy doing other things. But a police officer that was off duty. So I guess when you think of a person being off duty, right? Do you even see them as a police officer in that instant? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna try to turn my mic down some because I know it was really loud earlier. You guys let me know if it's too loud. Okay? Let me know if my sound is okay. Thumbs up or something. But let me look. Hey Mr. Brooks, how are you? How are you? But I'm curious as to whether you even called them. Let me pull up this article so I can read it verbatim. So the one that I'm reading from is the article written by Omar Jimenez from CNN. Off-duty officer puts his knee on a 12-year-old's neck for more than 20 seconds while breaking up school fight, video shows. That's what I'm reading. Surveillance video released by the Kenosha Unified School District Friday. Don't you guys think that's... Let me save that for my thoughts. Let me finish reading this. Shows an off-duty Kenosha police officer put his knee on the neck of a 12-year-old girl to restrain her for more than 20 seconds while attempting to break up a fight in the cafeteria of Lincoln Middle School. The video, which includes different angles of the incident without sound, shows a fight between two students as an off-duty officer working school security at the time attempts to break it up before either being hit or falling backward with one of the students. It appears he hits his head on the edge of a nearby table. Shortly after, the officer is seen on top of the student and appears to push her head into the ground with one hand and then place his knee on her neck for about 25 seconds, appearing to apply the pressure of his body weight at some point. How does one appear to be applying their body weight? This is interesting. The 12-year-old girl is eventually handcuffed, picked up, and led away, the video shows. CNN is not naming the 12-year-old girl because she's a minor. That makes sense. The family's attorney, Drew Devini, is that his name? I don't know, said the officer's knee was on her neck for an unconscionable duration. Okay. Social media video released earlier appeared to show a fight between two students as the off-duty officer attempted to break it up before either being hit or falling backward. Shortly after, he is seen on top of the student. This was a cruel and heartless act of violence aimed at a child and is unacceptable in our society, the attorney said in a statement. The girl's father received the surveillance video Friday, is appalled by what he has seen, and is demanding that the Kenosha department immediately terminate this officer, the statement added. The off-duty officer was working part-time at school as a security guard, but he has since resigned from his position with the school district. CNN reached out to the Kenosha Police Department inquiring about his status as a police officer, but has not received a response. The department also did not respond when asked about the extent of any injuries the officer may have sustained as a part of the incident. I'm glad somebody has talked about that. I'm just, let me be the, how do you say? Let me play devil's advocate just a little bit, okay? Nobody was curious about that. Okay, so police did confirm to CNN this week, however, that the criminal charge of disorderly conduct has been referred to the court system for both juveniles involved in the accident. I was curious about that. Don't know about you guys. The Kenosha County District Attorney Office indicated there is generally a 40-day window before the facts of any juvenile case like this, if not settled beforehand, could make it to their office for any potential decision on a formal charge. There is no petty arrest. Matt Hardy, Director of Operations for the National Association of School Resource Officers, told CNN Friday, but added, "We never trained to put our knee on the back of anyone's neck. I've never been aware of any training anywhere in regards to that," he said. I'm going to let Susanna in here.
Well, hello, Dr. Jefferson. Oh my goodness, where have you been?
Hi. But so, hi, Black Anonymous. How are you? And I have been amazing, Nova Real Show. But so, Susanna, right now we are in the middle of reading this very interesting article from CNN about the Kenosha kid that was involved in a fight, and she's 12 years old. And the controversy, I want to get to the controversial part. The controversy is around the responding officer, who was school security at the time, placing his knee on the back of her neck. That's what the controversy is over. I'm going to give my thoughts after I'm done reading this long article, because I think there are so many layers to this. I think, I'm a full scope, full picture kind of person. So basically, the National Association for Resource Officers, they're saying that they've never trained anybody to put National Association of School Resource Officers, right? They're saying they've never trained anybody to put their knees on the back of anybody's neck, okay? And then they further say, "I've never been aware of any training anywhere in regards to that." He also pointed to specific factors that would help determine the type of response used, and I'm so happy this is here, because I was going to ask about that. Used in a school fight circumstance like this, including the age and size of children involved. "I would have liked to see more teachers and more school staff in that situation than a security officer," he said, as he acknowledged being in school is different than what you get on the streets. Not every police officer is cut out to be an SRO, school resource officer. This is so interesting to me. This is beyond interesting to me. It's getting more interesting by the moment. What school policy says about restraint, because I was also curious about that. In regards to the restraint use, the school incident report provided by Davini, the girl's attorney, indicates there was pressure or weight on the student's neck or throat or an artery. Or that otherwise obstruct the child's circulation and breathing, and that the student was placed in a prone position. The report also says the restraint did not cause any chest compressions, and there was adequate care to protecting the student's head, despite the screenshot appearing to show off-duty officer holding the student's head to the ground. Kenosha Unified School District policy says the physical restraint on a student would be permissible in certain circumstances, including when a student is presenting as a clear, present, and imminent risk to the safety of others, and as long as it's not a prohibited maneuver or technique. I think that's interesting. Putting pressure or weight on the student's neck or throat or an artery or on the back of a student's head or neck, or that otherwise obstructs the student's circulation or breathing is among those prohibited maneuvers or techniques, as is placing a student in a prone position, chest down, back up. The internal employment investigation has concluded. Tanya Reuter, Chief Communications Officer for the Kenosha Unified School District, told CNN Friday. Reuter added that as it appears that this incident may lead to litigation, the district will provide no further details at this time. Well, I feel like that's definitely something that they should do, like shut up, don't say anything else. But there are so many levels here. There are so many levels here. What do you think so far, Susanna? What are your thoughts? Oh, one sec. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just saying I'm now hearing about this. I'm trying to type.
I was just hearing about it. I saw it in my inbox a couple of days ago, but I never opened it. It was sent to me by a couple of people, actually. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, let me open this. Let me see what this is about. And I was going to do it this weekend. And I was like, oh, I'm just tired. I just need some rest, self-care. Mm-hmm. And so I rested instead. But I made sure that at the end of my day today, I came on here and we were going to talk about this, because I was like, another one of the questions that that was asked repetitively over and over again is around some of the stuff that you and I have both been seeing on social media groups for clinicians of color in particular. So I wanted to kind of just bring all of this in full circle and have this discussion, because I feel like it is one that is very, very important. And I have a lot of thoughts about this. I want to know, what do you guys think about this particular issue with the 12-year-old having been involved in the situation in Kenosha? What do you think about Kenosha? What's going on there? Tell me, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Susanna? Kenosha, by the way, is where George Floyd experienced this exact same thing.
Okay. So there's a lot of chaos going on. There's a lot of unmonitoring kids. There's a lot of lack of discipline. There's a lot of parentified kids. Okay. Fighting, gang stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay. A lot of racial tension. The whole killing. Oh wow. Okay. Because that's what this is getting played out as. I understand. Yes. Okay. Just from what you say.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I'm curious, and in my evaluating this, looking at this entire picture, one of the things that stood out for me is her father's response. Okay. And I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna say this. I have facilitated therapy for roughly 76 parents at this point who are Black mothers and fathers who have lost their children that are grown and children that are not grown, to inner city Black on Black crime. And this is in the last couple of months. Okay. This is what I'm going to say. Okay. And this is just for a small area of people. Okay. Last 2 months, 76, no, maybe 77. Last 2 months. That's how many intakes that I've done around that particular issue just here in Atlanta. Have you ever heard that there is a ripple effect? Like, do you ever think about there being a ripple effect? You ever think about cause and effect? So that's how I think. I'm a pragmatist, you guys. Y'all know that. If you have been here, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I am a very strong voice and advocate for the Black community and what's fair and what's just and what's right. However, I don't BS around these issues because I do think they're very important.
Mm-hmm.
There is a ripple effect of sorts happening here. And I think it's so important for us to have this discussion, because when we don't take accountability for our part in a particular
Mm-hmm.
thing and we always seek to blame, and we are the parents.
Mm-hmm. Like, where did this kid learn this behavior from? Where did this kid
Exactly.
think it was okay?
Right. And furthermore, what will this child look like as they navigate life in the future and make conscientious decisions around how they see the world
Mm.
responding to them, not only in their black skin, their brown skin, but also in their relations around their sex and stuff like that, because that's a whole separate show. I wanted to do that show separately, but
Mm.
somebody else gave me the story about the teacher who was telling kids not to ever say the word gay. She
Oh.
prohibited it.
Mm.
And she further went to say that children couldn't identify as gay and those things,
Uh-huh.
because she doesn't want to hear any talks about their sexuality, their orientation, any of that stuff in her classroom.
Because that's not what school is for, right?
Right. But same school system has advocated to have a full-on sex education class for same-sex students.
Mm.
And sex education talks about sexuality, human sexuality and development, developmental issues around sexuality, sexual orientation. Talks about safe sex, talks about Planned Parenting. That's a wide array of things being covered.
Who's the target audience?
Children, those same
Right.
children. They can't
Children who are
say
perceived as heterosexual.
no,
No,
no.
oh, okay, okay.
Well, you can't make them.
No, because I mean, I don't know if they feel like kids aren't really gay. Then who's their pop? Like, who are they? Who's the orientation is this for? Mm-hmm.
I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Kenosha is where Jacob Blake was shot in the back by police and now paralyzed from the waist down. George Floyd's killing happened in Minnesota. Oh, it was. You're right. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You're right. I meant the aftermath of George Floyd, and that is that chaos there.
But what's the identifying factor is we're looking at the Black community. Right?
Right.
Doesn't matter where you are, because that stuff happens down here, right? Okay.
But I appreciate that, Black Anonymous. Thank you. Thank you for the fact check. I appreciate that. I need that. Because, it's been a while since I've talked about these issues, and they are all, to me, they're all together. They're all together. They're all together. Breonna Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
George Floyd, and Jacob Blake. All of it is all together. And it says that I think it sends a deeper message. I think it says that there is something going on in the Black community to where police officers, regardless of the color of their skin, feel threatened. And I feel like rightfully so. So it's interesting to me how this article brushed over the fact that the officer who was responding, trying to break up the fight,
Mm-hmm.
was pushed down and had suffered a head trauma by this child before he did this, before he restrained her. I think that was interesting, the way that it's written, but I also think that it's even more interesting that her father is going after the school resource officer with his attorney and not the parents of the child that was involved in the fight with his child.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. What does that tell me?
And is it around the foot on the neck issue?
Because the foot on the neck, so that's what I mean by ripple effect, folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not one to appropriate any negative behavior, but I'm one to point out all of the inconsistencies. But so I see inconsistencies in accountability. Here it is, you want an officer to take accountability for what he's done in the school system to your daughter, but where's the accountability as it relates to the assault that your daughter initially
Mm-hmm.
inflicted upon this officer. That's also on camera.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
What is happening in the homes of Black people where we have appropriated our children behaving like animals in the street
And yeah, that it's okay for them to fight
in the first
anybody,
place?
including adults.
In the first place, right? So to me, I'm sorry, you guys. I get his, pressure on the neck and all that good stuff. It's making you uncomfortable. Kind of makes me uncomfortable too.
Mm-hmm.
But what makes me more uncomfortable is that this child ever was in that position, that these children are continuing to fight in these schools, and that parents are appropriating that level of behavior and interaction between these children. That's what creates the type of response that a police system has to the Black community, right? So it's not to say that fights don't happen in white schools, if there is a such thing. It's not to say fights don't happen in other schools in general. It's to say that when fights happen in schools in other countries, people respond with discipline, corrective
Mm-hmm.
action to their children, so
Mm-hmm.
their children understand this is unacceptable behavior. So, what's happening on the emotional regulation component for your child? Like why is nobody trying to help these kids to adapt more healthy ways of relating to one another? I just think, I don't know, I think maybe it's this generation for me. Maybe it's not the race, maybe it's this generation. It's this entire generation raising these
Mm-hmm.
children, or a lack.
Even raising children.
Yeah.
Sorry, gotta say it.
Hi, Kel, how are you?
Because I guess there is now the police officers are getting blamed for what happened, even though the kids, they
Oh,
did what they're
that's
supposed to do, what they do as police officers. They're getting blamed for what they did, despite the fact that the kids created this situation. And nobody is talking about the kids' behavior. Now it's the police foot on her neck.
Let me go back to Mr. Brooks' comment. He said that is the norm in Florida.
Wow.
Mr. Brooks, are you referring to the fights in the school or the response to the children in the fights in the school?
Hmm.
And I think it was really interesting that the school put out such a comprehensive statement. But I'm not convinced that any of their school resource officers have any training that specifies what a takedown looks like, because I'm not, and I'm not going to say that I know this for a fact, because I don't, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe they've ever trained resource officers to have an effective takedown or ineffective takedown of young people at this age, middle school. We're talking about middle school kids.
I didn't think they had the authority to touch. So that you make phone calls if the situation got out of hand. You try to talk the kid to go this way, go that way, back off, back off. And if fight started, you call for additional help, like i.e. the police.
Right. And this is interesting, right? The school system is saying they would have liked to see more teachers involved
Mm-mm.
in breaking up the fight. Now, after the last 2 years that we've seen teachers try and interject in a fight and be hurt, be punched, and that's just not even the last 2 years.
Well,
But
no, there's a kid
let's just be
who
real.
knocked out the teacher last week.
Right. Right. And
Knocked
this
on the head.
kid, yeah, but this kid knocked the resource officer down, bust his head.
And that doesn't get discussed. What gets discussed is his neck, his knee on her neck,
Mm-hmm.
to emulate what George Floyd has experienced.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. That's what we're working with, not the kid's behavior.
I just think it's interesting.
Mm.
I just think it's interesting. I do feel like all parties involved
Right.
have a level of accountability in this situation. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, due to the fact that I understand ripple effects very well and I believe in accountability, and that's what this channel is about, I feel like her parents, her father, this father, should have been trying to get to the bottom of what made you think it was okay for you to fight at school. Did someone bully you? Let's handle
Mm-hmm.
that issue, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a centralized theme of what has transpired that led to this officer ever being able to touch you in any way, right? So I would want to have gotten to the bottom of all of that versus trying to deal with the aftermath of my child's inadequate behavior, unacceptable behavior at school. Okay, and I'm a parent, right? You guys,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna say I'm a parent. Have my kids been involved in fights at school? One. One out of 11. One. In one fight.
I think my son, somebody said something, made comment about his race, and he got in his face, and we had a conversation about that because that's not what we do. I understood. I mean, I understood he was there, but there are ways in which you could handle somebody calling you the N word without.
Right. And I
I
mean,
think a part of him. Remember, we don't hit. You're not hitting. I could address the behavior, but we still took a look at that.
and it was interesting because with my son, the one that was involved in the fight, he was involved in a fight that went viral on the internet and all of that great stuff. Because that's what these kids do. They record
Mm-hmm.
everything, put it everywhere. And the fight there started because the guy, and this is black school. It's the first time in a black school. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
black
Mm-hmm.
school. And my son was discriminated against because he had never been to a all black school. And to me, I'm like, that's not an all black school. What is an all black school? And that's when I learned that if the school is more than 50% black and brown people, it's black. I'm like, but what about all the rest of the folks that are going? But okay, this is America. I get it. That's fine. However, my son was backed in the corner and he was jumped and he came out of the fight and you know, he didn't lose the fight. But at the end of the day, he lost the fight with me because my thing is, I feel like you could have defended yourself enough to get out of the situation. You didn't have to go and take it all the way there.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
understand? I told you guys, I'm a pragmatist. Like, to the core. To the core. Like, I understand that there are times that you must defend yourself. I totally get that. But you have self defense techniques that will help you be able to do
Mm-hmm.
that, and you don't have to get on the same level as the person that you're engaging with. And I feel like parents have to learn conflict resolution
Mm-hmm.
skills and model those skills in front of the kids that are appropriate if these young kids are going to act as if they got some sense. That's because that's what it is. It's about what your grandmother used to say, but the grandmothers are no longer alive. Act
Right.
like you got some sense out there because you're
Mm-hmm.
representing who? I just I just don't.
And if this happens, it gets addressed the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be four and five and six time. Or get to this because I don't know. I'm just probably saying I don't know if this is the first fight you've ever been in. I don't think so. But so this stuff, this fighting has happened before. How has that gotten addressed in the family so that
Right.
she still thinks it's okay to do what she do? What happened? And she might have been defending herself, but clearly it sounds like a whole lot more happened.
Right. And I feel like even if she were defending herself, right?
Mhm.
What are we teaching our children about respect for their elders and for law enforcement? And are we teaching them anything?
Mm.
Because we have how you say a gripe against police officers right now, because especially in Kenosha, black people have a gripe against police officers, rightfully so. You
Mhm.
shot a man in the back that is a black man, and whatever his circumstances are, you shot him multiple times, shot at him multiple times to the back. So I get that, but what are we teaching our children about the fact that one doesn't represent the entire collective of police officers, and that respect is due to a dog? Essentially, that's what my grandparents used to say. But I just, it's about pragmatics, it's about respectability politics, it's about all of that for me. So those are my thoughts about it. I just feel like there are so many levels of wrong here that you can't even really start to dissect and address this. That, to me, this situation says that there is a gross miscarriage of parenting in the Black community, and we just need to do better.
And I think that becomes the issue, because I guarantee you'll get some slack tomorrow. How dare you pick on parents when this little girl, this grown man had his knee on her neck? How dare you pick on the parents?
How dare I? How dare I? 12-year-old with the strength to put an officer down.
Busted his head, right? Okay.
Yep. Knocked him down, bust his head. And what is he doing? He's trying to advocate for the safety of the girl. And that happened with the other girl. What was that girl that had the knife at the other girl and she ended up getting shot and killed when the police responded to
Yeah. All right.
This is what we are teaching our teenagers is okay. And I'm telling you guys right now, if you don't understand the ripple effect, if you don't understand conditioning, classic and operant conditioning, I need you guys to understand that what your children are seeing right now unveil in the Black community and the way that we show up to defend wrongdoings of our children and hold them up when they're wrong. When we do that, it shows these other children that that's okay, and that regardless of what they do, people still have to handle them with kid gloves, and that's just not a fact. You're not preparing your child for reality. And I think that essentially, all things considered, if I was the officer, I'd be suing the parents and this little girl. I'm just going to be honest. That's just what it is. Sue me. Feel how you want to feel. But at the end of the day, your child has to learn that adults are adults. And that's the reason the teachers didn't want to get involved.
Nor should they be.
It's just sad.
Because it's not the resource teacher responsibility to teach this kid to calm down. It is you, the parent, to teach the kid some coping skills when somebody's in her face, how to deal with that, including walking away.
Exactly. And I just don't understand. If the parents feel like they don't have the adequate skill set and things like that, that's why you hire a mental health practitioner. Let them get in there and help. Because mental health practitioners, they do have school community resource clinicians and things like that. They can come into school and do therapy with your kid and help them understand how to manage their element, in their element. So I just...
And they can come into homes and help the parents. Because you see families and couples. You see them sitting in your office. One over there and the next one over there, so that they don't
end up in a situation to where they're going to fight. And these are skill sets that we talk about. We talk about conflict resolution skills. We talk about violence, intimate partner violence. We talk about what that does to the young child that is observing that behavior. We talk about what level of accountability has to be taken in order for us to improve outcomes for the way that our children process and go out and become, productive members of society, essentially. And I think that we have a responsibility to do that. We have to teach people how to properly emotionally regulate. We have to teach people how to properly recognize what they're currently experiencing so they don't end up spiraling like this.
Right.
I
think kids will act out what they see.
Right. And, I understand, like, a lot of folks are like, oh, no, it's the environment there. It's you. It's you. It's you as parents, period. It's not about responsibility. It's about accountability. So you have to be accountable to the role that you have as a parent. Parents have to stop having children just because they think it's something fun to do. So many parents have become parents because they wanted to have sex and the sex was good. It was a very enjoyable experience for them. And as a result, when they got pregnant,
Mm.
You got some of them that felt like they wanted to trap the other parent. Some of them realized
Mm.
it didn't work. You ended up a single parent home. There are so many different factors around what creates the dynamic that spirals into what we see right now. And there are some where parents were married, they were in healthy relationships, and then they started to decline, but they still had
Mm.
these kids, and now there is, you know, frustration and pain around the breakup, and these kids are seeing the level of craziness go between the dance of the parents, and they incorporate that in their own lives and act out those symptoms. So
Mm.
I feel like there are just so many different levels to how this
Yeah.
starts to create their how they create their own chaos, and how
Mhm.
these children become adaptive of negative undesired outcomes and behaviors, but then it spirals into something like this.
Mhm.
Like,
12 years later.
yeah. So
Mhm.
um mental health versus mental illness, and shame versus acceptance, or coming into a place of acceptance when it comes to getting help. um I think, to talk to the points that we've been talking about, I think that oftentimes there are stigmas, still stigmas to this day in 2022. Today is March 21st, 2022. There are still stigmas when it comes to getting mental health help.
Mhm.
And
In the
I
Black community, especially.
exactly, and what that means for people. I even have professionals that come to me for help, and they're still like, please don't put the diagnostic code in my chart because.
Oh, I'm not going to use my insurance because if I do, then you have to put a diagnosis. And if I want to get life insurance, that can be an issue.
I think that we have to become people that recognize there is a need for professional help in our community when we see so much brokenness,
Mhm.
when we see so much incongruence.
Mhm.
Um, that's just where I am on that. Like I mentioned before, to be mentally healthy, sometimes you have to be a person that goes in for mental health wellness visits, right?
Mhm.
Checkups, screenings, making sure that you're on top of your health, right? In the same way that you go for a wellness visit to your primary care physician. Your PCP is a person that is responsible for your physiological and biological health. We are responsible for your psychological and mental health, right? And behavioral health and emotional health and well being. I think that a person has to be congruent. And congruence doesn't come from you being in the dance of life and evaluating your own self. It comes from
Mhm.
being able to take healthy outside perspectives of what your health looks like and what your functionality looks like across the board on an evaluative scale, right?
Mhm.
That's unobjective. So not your friends and your family and the people
Mhm.
that placate you throughout life. I think that these are things that people have got to start doing on a larger scale, and I think that would mitigate some of what we see in that last story. Like, had this young girl had what she needed, had the
Mhm.
school had what they needed, I feel like none of this would have happened.
Mhm.
You know,
Had the parents reach out the very first time she got into a fight, it could have changed how what happened that day. That didn't need to happen had she gotten the mental health that she needed at the time. Because this is not the first fight.
right?
You
Or
know what
the
I
first
mean?
time she became isolated, defiant.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of this stuff comes with the type of behavior that we saw today. It doesn't just happen.
Right.
It's a process.
That's right.
So, you know,
And it's amazing, to just for people to really understand what trauma looks like.
right. And what it looks like when children are acting out the
Mhm.
symptoms of the trauma that happens in their households, and
Mhm.
the level of trauma that happens in households, and the way that we need to move into a place of acceptance and understanding as to what that looks like.
Mhm.
Um I feel like oftentimes shame is one of the things that prevents people from getting help when they need it,
Mhm.
and attenuating their energy and their senses to their wellness, right?
Right.
because they see it as mental illness. They see
Mm.
themselves as ill,
Something
right?
is wrong with me.
Right. And I think that's interesting too, because that's one of the challenges I feel like we run into when we are providing therapeutic services for people, because oftentimes folks will be like, oh, well, you know, what's the diagnosis? Doc, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? It's not what's wrong with you. What condition, based on your assessment, do you find that I'm dealing with, right? And how can I learn to externalize that thing and get to living my best life, being the best version of myself and mitigating my symptom presentation? And I feel like that's what therapy is about. Therapy is about finding yourself in a place to where you can learn how to balance. You can learn what it is that you've been going through, what's been triggering the behaviors that bring you in for a wellness visit or a health checkup or a behavioral health checkup or emotional health screening, because you're noticing some of the symptoms: crying spells, isolation, irritable moods, agitation, whatever bringing you in, anxiety,
Mhm.
depressive episodes. When you see these things happening, when you see these panic attacks coming up and things like that, you need to see a professional so that we can identify what's going on, so that things do not spiral to the next level. Because
Mhm.
the further you let it go, the larger this thing will grow,
Right.
and so you want it to become less of an impact on you and get control over it before it takes control of you. And I think that if we move from a place of shame and we move into a place of acceptance of the fact that everybody's got their own things that they're going through, it makes it just a little bit easier to say, yeah,
Mhm.
I can do that.
Right.
Um,
And it's okay. And it's
right,
really okay. And it's not that something is wrong with me. Because that's really what shame is. You thinking something is really wrong with that piece of you inside. It's
right.
really not. Mhm.
So this brings me to our final snippet of our discussion tonight. The question is, are mental health providers becoming more burned out? And I'm going to be honest, the person that sent
Mhm.
this to me said burnt, like burnt orange. I was
Mhm.
like,
Oh, I got on burnt orange.
hmm.
I got on burnt orange. Oh dear.
Right, right. You got the appropriate colors on, okay?
But I'm not burnt out. No.
Mm, mm, mm.
Mm.
So, are mental health providers becoming more burnt, to use what they really use, out? Is this issue limited to the Black community? And what are my thoughts? That's what they asked. And
Yes, the answer. Yes, call a thing, as you say. Yes, they are because there were multiple. There were multiple websites. There are multiple groups. When you read the posts and you follow the comments, you hear it as clear as day. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm moving into another. I'm moving into another field. How dare this client did that to me? Said this to me. I wanted to do X Y Z to the client. You hear people talk about that stuff.
so
This is
for
not
this
the right
part of
thing
the
anymore.
conversation, I'm gonna need all the clinicians to come on over here. Come on, get a little closer, have a seat.
Uh,
So look like Tab Brown said, let me talk.
um,
So
this is just between me and you. How about that, right?
I saw this post,
Mm-hmm.
and some of that post was screenshot. And here's what I want to say. Okay. I'm gonna get real close so y'all can
Mm-hmm.
hear me real good. To the clinicians out there are lots of people. Social media is social media. That's the first thing. HIPAA, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. It is a real thing. And there are many things that you guys put out there on these social media clinician groups
Mm-hmm.
that are in direct violation of HIPAA, and that are super unethical, and sometimes make me want to do a double take,
Mm-hmm.
triple,
No
triple take.
integrity. I end up saying there's no integrity in this person.
Right. And so I'm very concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very concerned because a couple of things here. Okay. I have several groups that are inclusive of black, brown people, white people, different people, Indian people, Asian folks. I've got a ton of different groups that I'm a part of and on social media in general, and not just Facebook, but across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And even professional organizations, but I've never seen the level of unprofessional behavior that I see in the black clinicians group because they feel like, and this is me quoting many of the posts that I see in there. This is a safe space. I thought this was a safe space.
Or even dismissing other clinicians' comment towards yours.
And more
I've
importantly,
had what's the word? Backlash for
yeah,
making a couple of comments.
and me too.
Oh
My thing is,
yeah.
if you go out and you reach out and you're asking a question and someone else has the answer and there is a definitive answer, not just a perspective being shared even. Um mm, Clinicians need help too.
So, the thing about it, right, is it doesn't matter if you're a social worker, a licensed practicing counselor, a licensed marriage therapist, a licensed mental health counselor. Supervision is a necessity, right? You get that even in your internship before you become one of those. And all that profession, all those different specialty encourage you to continue to do that.
Yeah, continued professional
Long after
consultations
your
are
license.
a huge component to you remaining very competent in this field.
Right.
And here's what I'm going to say to answer as far as my overall thoughts. Yes, I don't think that this issue is limited to the black community. Clinical burnout is pretty much wide scale. Anybody can become burnout doing this work. However, I believe there are other issues of concern around efficacy, competency, and things like that. Clinical outcome. These are things that I'm very concerned about for our people because our people have a tendency, if we're going to do therapy, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it with another person that looks like us. Therapy is not a place where our opinions matter. This show is a place where our opinions are at, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in therapy with my clients, you will not get a single opinion. It's not my professionally.
Mm-hmm.
We are not there to give you our opinions. We are there to help you heal. There is a process that goes along with that. There are years of theoretical framework around that, years of research around that, what we do in therapy. And so that should guide and construct the way that a therapist, counselor,
Mm-hmm.
social worker, all of these individuals who are in clinical practice conduct themselves and are doing their jobs professionally. Now, I'm not going to say that people don't do whatever they want to do and just kind of just wing it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ethical. But so, yes, I think I have learned in recent weeks that black clinicians do have a particular dislike for clinical work that is grounded in theory. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact because I can over a million comments confirm it.
Mm-hmm.
A million different clinicians comments is what I'm saying.
Grounded in Eurocentric.
Yeah.
That's the real focus. That's
Yeah.
really what
That's
it is.
that's what they see it as. And I'm just gonna call a thing a thing.
That's what it
So
is.
that's that's the one thing. The second thing is that I've seen a separate post where there are melanated and black clinicians who are licensed professionals who are saying that they are done and they are tired of this work. And that's how you get tired of this work. When you start being lost in the client's content and you are outside of the process, so you don't know what to do with yourself and your maneuverability is limited as a clinician, what happens is you find yourself having a conversation with a friend. It's very easy to become frustrated then. It's called transference.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that some of these young folks think that transference and countertransference
Don't
aren't the
exist.
same.
Now I've been told, what are you talking about, lady? Actually, I was told that that's outdated and not used anymore. Um,
But
but
so,
that's okay.
as an integrative practitioner, I am going to say this.
Mhm.
If you are going to see somebody for your mental health and wellness needs, you need to vet them and vet them carefully. You need to make sure that you're seeking, services of a provider who has a particular epistemology that contextualizes what their framework is when it comes to therapy, problem presentation, and human beings
Mhm.
and things like that. Because these things are important. And here's the thing, clinicians, I'm going to tell you guys this. It's not that I have anything against you being burned out or tired of the work or whatever,
Mhm.
because if you this is not for you, I think it's healthy for you to make a decision that this is for you and move out of the field. But it's the fact that you're continuing to provide therapy for people and then you're causing more harm
Mhm.
than good. And remember what I said about ripple effects earlier, you guys, because y'all
Mhm.
know that I'm a pragmatist. What can I say? You're making the work harder for clinicians that are dedicated to trauma informed work to try and heal our folks and get us in a higher level of executive functioning so that we can be better versions of ourselves for these young people that we're responsible for curating into adult. Like, I just think that there are just so many levels to this. Okay. I really do. Um,
And that it's also important as clinicians that you get your own work done.
yeah, if you need
That,
therapy,
yeah,
get it. I'm a strong advocate for therapy.
your clients may reflect some of the things you experience as well when they're sitting in there. And if you've never dealt with your stuff, you are going to have a really strong reaction. And one of it is, I don't want to do with it. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Exactly. And then you leave them in their vulnerable place,
Yeah.
and that's not safe.
No, and our work is to do no harm.
Exactly. So I just think that, those are my thoughts, you guys. That's how I feel about
Mhm.
that. I think that clinicians have to do a better job at making sure that they're equipped to do the work. And I think that you need to vet your clinician out well if you're going to find yourself under the care of a clinician, regardless of what their specialty is. Um, these are really important things.
So, can I ask you a question, Dr. Jeffin? So, someone is out there looking for a therapist. What are some of the things they can ask when they meet a therapist? And so they see somebody and say, I might be interested in working with her. What are some of the things they can ask?
If I'm a person looking for therapy, and I have been a person looking for therapy several different times, I'm very nosy. I want to know, what is your framework? What's your clinical framework? What's your specialty? What do you find is your niche, right? And you know, are you currently accepting clients, or will there be a waiting list? What are the potential costs associated with myself getting
Mm-hmm.
therapy? Um, what's the process to find out if we're a good fit for one another? Do you offer free consultations?
Mm-hmm.
If you do offer paid consultations, I'm okay, but how much is that going to cost me? And for how long are we going to have to talk? How many questions am I allowed to ask? What does that look like? I'd be asking all of these questions. What are the people that you see going through the most issues right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really good question to ask for a couple of reasons, people. You need to understand the type of population history that your clinician that you're vetting
Mm-hmm.
has actually worked with, and you can tell whether or not they're lying. you know, if they're lying. That's your way of, trying to vet whether or not that you're working with a novice clinician, a new clinician, or clinical intern, or something that's just trying to say whatever they think will pass, right? Because there are some common issues, and you will notice some common issues going around in the neighborhood around you, around people around you, that people go through.
Mm-hmm.
um, and don't base it just solely off of what you see. Base it off of everything, the whole picture, what you're seeing on the news, what you're seeing in your real
Mm-hmm.
life, what you're seeing in your community, and stuff like that. So ask those questions, and then ask about the clinician's alternative, biases, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would want to know, what are some of the biases that you've recognized you have as a clinician, right? And what is some of the stuff that you're doing to work around those biases, or put them to the side when you recognize them coming up? Because one of the things that MFTs do very well, and I'm not sure about the other clinical disciplines, but we learn to identify the things that we naturally have biases around so that we can appropriately show up for our client in a way that is effective for them. It increases your efficacy because you're a human being. You're always going to have something that you're biased to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have teams that I'm biased to. I have colors that I'm biased to. I have themes that I'm biased to. I have musical biases. I have several, right? And so if I am honest about those biases, what that says is that when we're having conversations around those things in therapy, I'm moving those to the side, and these are things that I'm going to be especially curious about as it relates to you, because I have to remove all of the me knowledge, period, in the therapeutic process. It has to be 100% you being the expert of your life, your system, and I am only the expert of the process for me. And as an experiential therapist, I think it's really important for folks to narrate where they see themselves going, where they see themselves having been, and where they see themselves currently in their lives so that we can properly render the help that they need. So I just feel like those are some very important questions. I don't know if I feel like their credentials and stuff are typically going to be posted wherever you found them. But if you were referred to them, you can ask them about their credentials and specialties and things like that. How long they've been in clinical practice and from which they came from one and transited to another. These are all really, really good questions. And if you have a clinician who doesn't want to give you this information, I just would maybe elect to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Clinician number 2.
Right. But so, and then I would also ask them, like, what's your process? Like, because this is the thing that I hear coming up. I hear that there are clinicians out there doing therapy and they've not conducted a behavioral health assessment or a biopsychosocial assessment. There are no assessments. They just see you on the first day and we're doing therapy.
No treatment planning either.
Yeah, but that's the one has to happen before
the other. Right? That's true.
Okay. You need one before the other. You can't decide what you're treating me for if you haven't even
know anything about me. You're not going to pick it up in session 6 or 7 either.
I don't know who you are. I don't know who you clinicians are. And I'm not shaming you.
Yeah.
But shame on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you have people in therapy or counseling or clinical social work sessions that are counseling related, if you're doing any work with them and you've not done a thorough assessment that yields to you an efficient diagnosis and treatment plan for what happens, the work you're going to do with them, what are you doing? What are you doing exactly? And I mean, that's a serious question. So for anyone to catch this video in the aftermath of me uploading it, please.
Because first of all, the client is not going to stay. And when they move on to someone else, they'll say, I've never been asked these squeeze questions. I've never had this process happen. They've never experienced any other thing. A clinician who is following through with the appropriate way to work with a client, identify the issues, and come up with a diagnosis and treatment planning so that you could help the client be who they need to be. If you've never done none of that stuff, you actually, once again, doing more harm than good.
Right. So I can't tell you guys how to run your practice. I can't tell you what to do, but
it's something you taught in school.
Right. And I'm just going to say this to everybody watching. If you have a clinician that's not doing their due diligence and assessing properly, run very fast. Put on some track shoes. And I mean, get out of there. Like, seriously. So
right.
That is my show for the day. I have absolutely missed you guys. I heart, yeah. I want to thank Susanna for taking the time out to sit in and share her perspectives and kind of navigate this conversation with me, because I feel like it's one that has to take place. And I do feel like oftentimes we forget to have these conversations because we'll talk amongst one another, but we don't share that information with the rest of the public. And these are issues that concern the public in a huge way. But yeah, any other final thoughts and reflections that you have, Susanna?
No.
Okay. Well, I guess that is all, you guys. It's been extremely real sitting with you guys, and it's amazing to be back, right?
Yeah, it's real out there.
I know, right? You guys can expect me to be back at least once a week. Okay, I can commit to that. I can give you once a week, and sometimes it'll be like, it might be 2 weeks, because like I am beyond full right now, but I will be here. I'll be here. But that is all that I have, you guys. Have an amazing Monday start to your week, and I hope positive vibes and uplifting energy comes your way, and hopefully your week is flourishing after you view this content. If I happen to piss anyone off, that's okay.
That's okay. Welcome to spring.
Yes, it's the beginning of spring. It's a new season, a new day, so you can say whatever you need to say down in the comments below. Okay? So that is all that I have, you guys. Later day. Bye.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. Phenomenon.